In this video, we're going to discuss the object collider behavior. And in fact, we're actually going to make this a three-part mini-series because what I've really made here is kind of a small game, and that game is using multiple behaviors. And so rather than make a new scene for each one of those behaviors to explain them, I figured, you know what, this is a great example of those behaviors in action as well. So we'll make a series out of it, small series. And at the very end, the last episode, I'll explain how it's all wired up. So we'll focus on the newest behaviors, the ones that I haven't explained before, and then we'll see how the whole thing is put together at the end. So let's get started. This one's about object collider. So in this case, we're wanting to detect collision with an object. So I've got my little floater there at the top, and the pot's going back and forth. That's my dropper in this case. And so if I press E, then I'm going to drop a lamp, and that lamp is I'm trying to hit the pot at the ground. And if I collide with it, then it'll detect that collision, break the pots, and score some points. So let's try that. So press E. Hopefully I can hit the darn thing. There it goes. So it detected the collision, and then a couple seconds later, it should come right back up. It might be because that that lamp is a little too close, that one that I missed. Let's try that again. Let's see if I can hit it. Yeah, nailed it. And then it should come back up. There we go. Let's try another one. Oh, okay. So works on all three pots. I've already got them all wired up, but that's the object collider behavior. Let me show you how that works. All right. So like I said, the object collider behavior is set on all three pots, so they're all the same. And we'll just step through the parameters like we always do. So the first thing we have is terrain distance. So this I've got set to 0 because I'm not interested in colliding with the terrain. And so if I had that set to anything other than 0, if it was too close to the actual terrain, it would detect that collision. And that's not what we really want in this scenario. But you can detect collision with the terrain if that's what you're going for. In this case, it just didn't apply, so I set it to 0. We have the collision force. Now, this is a very, very small number because the object that I'm dropping doesn't weigh much. It's very small. I wanted to make sure that when it collided, it definitely detected it. It's not going very far. It's not picking up a lot of speed. And so really small number was what I needed to be able to detect that collision. But you'll need to dial it in because it really depends on the scenario that you're working with. The detection type is object collision in this case, because that's what I'm detecting is an object falling. But like I said before, we could detect terrain collision, or we could detect both. Again, depends on the scenario, but in this case, it makes sense to do object collision. We have detection trigger. So in other words, once it detects a collision, should it trigger something? That's really what it's asking. And in my case, I'm definitely doing that. I don't want to spoil anything, but as you could see, there was a smoke kind of came up from the ground, and then the pot came back after a few seconds. All of that is happening under the hood, and we'll talk about in the future episode. But yeah, definitely detecting the collision and then triggering something else to happen. Okay. We have the force bounce that I put on because what I found was that if the object that it drops is too close to the pot, as we saw there, it could inadvertently detect that collision a second time, especially if the timing's not right. So I drop a pot, even if I hit square on, that object might not disappear in time for the pot to try to come back. When the pot comes back, if it thinks the object's still there, it's going to detect collision again. And that's kind of what we saw with that nearby one. And so the bounce helps because it forces the lamp to just kind of bounce off and go somewhere else. And it should happen less. We can kind of work on what we could do to avoid something like that in the future if we were really making this for real. But we wasn't going that far into the details. You know what I mean? All right. So then we have the destroy collider. So in this case, once the object falls and it hits the target, should that object, the object that it detected collision with, be destroyed? And if so, how quickly? So going back to just what I was saying before, the lamp falls, collides with the pot. We want that lamp to go away as quickly as possible, because if it doesn't, then when the pot comes back, then it might detect it over again. Really kind of an edge case in this scenario. If you're doing something like, let's say you've got a scene where you're throwing a rock and breaking something. That something's not coming back. It's broken, right? This is kind of a arcade style game, so you want the pot to come back so you can continue to collide with it. But in most cases, that's not really going to be the case. So, but you still probably want that object to be destroyed, because if an object lingers around in the scene, it's taking up valuable resources from the game that it doesn't need to, right? So maybe that rock just goes away, subtly, quietly, and we don't need it anymore. So that's what that's for. The user global affected is whatever it is that I want to affect if I detect collision. So in my case, I've got a user global called score, and I'm affecting that user global. When the collision is detected, I'm affecting it by a 100 point value in the positive. So I'm selecting add rather than deduct. So you could do this in a lot of different ways. So let's suppose I throw a rock and I break something I'm not supposed to, then I could deduct points, right? Something like that. And then lastly, we have the 2 sound slots. So again, I always go back up to the description to kind of remind myself what the sound slots are for. The sound 0, the first one you see, plays on the collision with the terrain. And in my case, I'm not detecting collision with the terrain, so I don't need that sound, so I'm not using it. And then the second one plays collision with the object, which we heard that little crack sound, which honestly is just the object break sound, I think is the one, or yeah, break open sound that comes with Max is what I'm using for that. But that's it. That's the object collider behavior explained. And in the next episode of this mini series, we'll look at game monitor. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed the video or if you learned anything new, please be sure to click the like button down below. Helps me out a lot. If you're new here or if you just haven't subscribed yet, would love to have you stick around. And lastly, if you'd like a notification for whenever a new video is posted, just click the bell icon and that'll let you know when a new video is ready. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. I always appreciate that, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Hey, don't forget, there's written documentation on every behavior, even the ones I haven't covered yet, in video format on my website at www.bloodmooninteractive.com. Be sure to check that out. And if you'd like to learn more, maybe check this video out next.